Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. This feels like a little bit of an overdue review. Maybe it's just personally for me, because it's Sunday, and I saw this movie on Thursday, but the way my life goes, I was only able to carve out time to check out the movie. This is the first time I've had a chance to sit down to talk about it with you guys, and I'm super psyched too because I love this franchise so much. It is big, it is action-packed, it is absolutely absurd, and I am here for all those things, especially when the franchise embraces that stuff, which is exactly what this one does. What are we talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat, we're getting ready to dive in spoiler-free into Fast 9, a.k.a. F9, the Fast Saga. And this, of course, is the 9th entry in the Fast and Furious franchise, and Mr. Justin Lin is back after departing from after the 6th one. He's come back after this franchise walloped the world with 2 back-to-back billion-dollar movies, worldwide box office. And I think a lot of fans were, one, stoked for another Fast movie, and we've been waiting a very long time for it. Thank you, pandemic. But I think we've also been really excited to see Justin Lin come back to it, because I think fans of this franchise understand. It started in a place where it was grounded. That first movie is a pretty straightforward movie. Like, it's practical, it makes sense, it has logical beats to it, and the idea of taking, a crime storyline and inserting, street racing into it and kind of blending those worlds together, you got something that I thought was really special. And then there were some stumbling blocks. And Justin Lin was a part of some of those stumbling blocks as he came on for Tokyo Drift and then was there until Fast 6. And he's the guy who is responsible for finding this lane of absurd action that has turned this franchise into one of the most fun action franchises out there. Look, I understand anybody who's out on the Fast movies because they're too ridiculous or they're impossible or the things they do are just absurd. I get that. I happen to be here for it, and I appreciate the fact that the series, once it started to go that direction, stopped taking itself so seriously. And this movie in particular, like, canonly questions the events that have been going on in this saga. I mean, we've seen in the trailers Tyrese Gibson's Roman, note, like, you guys ever think, like, we've been on some crazy adventures, man. Like, we've taken down planes, trains, tanks, not even gonna mention submarines. Like, they've gone to places that should never happen with this particular group of people. But the fact that the franchise acknowledges that stuff in this movie really just kind of goes hand in hand in the sense that it doesn't take itself too seriously, and at the end of the day, it knows that it is a summertime popcorn flick. That's it, man. I want to go into the theater, cool off from the heat, turn my brain off, not think, and just watch spectacle. And that's what the Fast franchise is, and Justin Lin crushes this thing, man. It is gorgeous, and the action is insane. I think we see some of the most absurd, insane stuff we have ever seen in this franchise, or at least the most improbable. Like, the things that happen in this movie, if you think in the past, like, you've sat there and gone, man, like, that's physically impossible. Like, moving at that speed and hitting that thing at that speed, you would die, or at least end up in a hospital, not like just get up and keep walking. And the movie hits those places in the highest areas that it's ever gone to. And yeah, I'm hinting at space, which is what the trailers have hinted at. I'm not going to tell you what happens, but the movie is certainly attempting to go to space. I mean, we are taking cars, possibly, into orbit, which is wild and insane, but I'm so here for that stuff. And everything that Lin and co do from an action standpoint in this movie is just wonderful. I mean, whether it is the beats that have to do with space, whether it's the beats that have to do with those magnets that we've seen in the trailers, whether it's the, like, spy espionage stuff that they've got going on with John Cena's Jacob. There is one moment in particular that involves, like, him having to get across Edinburgh. It's wonderful. That's the stuff that, like, just captures your imagination in a way where it's like, yeah, it's ridiculous, but it's why I love the franchise. And all of his, even, grounded action that has to do with him and Vin Diesel, like, anything that they're doing in this movie it just works because it's the Fast and the Furious, man, and I love that. But it's not just all action, although it is mostly nonstop action. Lin does obviously hit some story beats, and he knows what makes this franchise stand out is that tie and that story that always surrounds family. And the idea of this one, which is the team gets contacted by Mr. Nobody when something gets stolen. And that thing could lead to several other things that could lead to someone having a piece of technology that allows them to control all the weaponry in the world. Like every major power would bend the knee. And that guy is John Cena. And John Cena's character is Jacob Toretto, which is the brother of Dominic Toretto, the family guy. So while Lin and Co. hit all the wonderful family beats you want a Fast movie to hit on, while they touch on the entire Fast family, we kind of keep tabs on everybody, even the people who don't show up in this movie. How Dom Toretto could have a brother that we've never met that he doesn't talk to. It doesn't make that. That's the thing in this movie that makes the least amount of sense. And Lin and Co. do a really good job of fleshing that part of the story out, mixed in with all of this action. They do it with flashbacks, and it's something that works really well. They do it occasionally throughout the entire film in these small little beats where you see young Dom and young Jacob and where they come from. And not only does it add depth to their relationship for their characters in the movie, but adds a lot of depth to Dom and his family background in general. A lot of the reasons Dom is the way he is because of things that happened in the past. And what's nice is the movie is able to maintain its mysteries and reveal them in the present with our characters proper, and then go back to show you the context of those reveals. And casting deserves a huge shout out. Finn Cole, who plays young Jacob, is spot on Cena sometimes. You see young Cena in him so much sometimes throughout the movie. And the same goes with Vinnie Bennett. A little bit less. I don't quite always pick up Dom, but his performance is 100% Dom. And they both do wonderful jobs as the young versions of these two characters. And all that stuff worked really well, man. You were able to give me all the action I was hoping for and a story beat that adds depth to characters that I already know and sets up a new character that I'm very glad is in the franchise. And that new character, of course, is Mr. John Cena. And Jacob Toretto is fascinating because he's an actual spy. This world of espionage and spy stuff, that's his world. So to watch him function inside of it and then see that line up against Dom and his team that probably have no business being there but are because that's the movies, it's a lot of fun. And John Cena, whether you like him or not, he's a movie star, man. And this role in particular is not one that screams John Cena to me. I think he's better when he can be more humorous and you can use him to get laughs. Because he's really good at that. It just suits his personality and the way he handles himself on screen, I think, better than it does when he's the straight man. However, the story here kind of requires him to be the straight man. He does a really good job with it. And like I said, I like him on screen with Vin Diesel. They go up against each other, and it feels like he is a worthy opponent for this team. And where they set him up, it's not necessarily with the Fast franchise proper. He does not go back home with Dom to have dinner around a big barbecue table. But if they decide to use him in the Hobbs and Shaw universe, you could 100% tap into that humor and that fun personality that John Cena has. There's definitely a lane for Jacob Toretto to be a little bit funnier, specifically if he's going head-to-head with The Rock, and I'm sure lots of wrestling fans would love that. But it remains to be seen where Jacob ends up. But I think Cena is a wonderful addition here, and hopefully they'll be able to use him quite well as they go forward. Now, the rest of the cast, you're getting what you know you're coming to get, man. Vin Diesel's fantastic. I mean, he is Dom Toretto, and like I said, matches up well with Cena. His action set pieces are good, and the concept of him being a dad, which they explore a little bit at the beginning of the movie, was something interesting. And I think Diesel handles all of that stuff really well. Of course, you got Michelle Rodriguez in there as Letty. She's got to be kind of like stepmom to a degree, so that there's a bit of that family beat there for her as well, that I think is interesting for the character. And she showed up, man. Like, she looks fantastic, and she came to play, man. Like, her action sequences, not necessarily always when she's involved in, like, the car stuff. Like, she rides the motorcycle a lot, so there's a lot of CGI and definitely stunt double stuff going on there. But a bunch of her hand-to-hand stuff. Her and Jordana Brewster have a really cool sequence inside of, like, what feels like an apartment, maybe. It's that scene we've seen in the trailer where she goes out the window with that guy. Really crushes all that stuff, and like I said, came to play. So I had a lot of fun with Letty this time around. I'm not always the biggest Michelle Rodriguez fan, but she works quite well here, and certainly enjoyed all of her action. Like I said, she teams up with Jordana Brewster for a little bit in this movie, and Mia shows up logically because of Jacob, and she does well, man. Like I said, that action bit with Rodriguez is really nice, and where they opt to place her throughout the film works. There is a story beat with her and Dom that's a little funky toward the end, only because like they have to do certain things, even if like logically for characters it wouldn't make sense. But as a Fast fan, I certainly appreciated what they were doing in that piece of the storyline. As I've mentioned, Tyrese Gibson and Ludacris are fantastic. Tej and Roman, or rather properly, Roman and Tej, obviously are back here. They're kind of our initial into the movie, and they're my favorite thing of this film, start to finish. I love their back and forth always. The fact that you have Roman going into this bit of like a conspiracy theory place and how that plays into their storyline, I just really like it, and I like what maybe they could explore down that road if they go forward. I think Tyrese is the perfect person to have that part of the story, and Ludacris is just the perfect person to counter him. I mean, like, you get all this conspiracy stuff, and then, you know, Tej is just like numbers, man. Numbers don't lie. That's why these things work. And that concept works really well inside of this, and they both show up, too, for the action. They get a scene inside of a van. Woo! Like, they both like are doing things in that scene, but Ludacris really popped in this movie when it came to the hand-to-hand combat, and popped specifically with his elbows. I ain't seen anybody use elbows the way Ludacris uses elbows, but it works, and it feels thunderous every time he throws them. And then, of course, there's Natalie Emanuel, who joined the team very recently, but she fits so well with this whole squad. She gets a little time with, I believe, Jordana Brewster toward the end of the movie, where they're kind of synced up, or maybe it's Letty, or maybe it's all three of them. When she's working with the girls in any capacity, that stuff's always fun, but when she is with Tyrese and Ludacris, she shines the most. I love watching Ramsey do her tech stuff and play off of those two guys. And what they're able to do with her in this movie, they're able to give her a little bit of a different beat and kind of insert her into some of the action. And that scene, oh, it's wonderful. Plays so well, and it seemed like it was so much fun for her. So I was very glad and happy to see her come back. Speaking of comeback, Charlize Theron is back in this, as is Kurt Russell's Mr. Nobody. And it's interesting how they play into the overall story. Like I said, kind of Mr. Nobody kind of sparks all of this by sending out like a piece of information. But, you know, nice to see him. Love seeing Charlize. Getting a little tired of her being like the person behind the scenes, behind the desk, like pulling the strings. And like, she's one of the best female action stars in the world. Really been hoping that like we could see her get into some action, you know, because she is so good at that. And it sort of feels like Cypher is feeling that way by the end of the movie. So I hope that next time we see her, she is throwing some bows, man. I mean, maybe she'll throw some bows, you know, match up with Ludacris. But I love her. Anything she does, she's fantastic. So I was very glad to see her show up back here. Helen Mirren also has a nice little cameo appearance as Queenie. A piece of the movie takes place in London, and they give her some fun stuff to do with Dom. She's a international treasure. I love Helen Mirren. And she's absolutely wonderful. And then you could say it was like the big surprise, but they showed it to us in the first trailer. Sung Kang is back as Han, and I loved every second of him being on screen. How they bring him back in, how it plays into the absurdity of just the franchise and the things that they do, why he's back, and where they leave him. Like I said, I like where they leave all the characters, and him in particular plays into the post-credit scene that there is, which is hysterical. I was in stitches for a good chunk of that because of what they utilize the scene for and with, like who's also involved in the scene with him. But what they set up Can't wait to see what we get next with Han. And at the end of the day, this is a top 5 Fast movie for me. Like I said, I think it's the upper half. For sure. I don't want to give like specific designations because I feel like I need to go back and rewatch the whole series. It's been a while since I did a full run through, but like no doubt is it at minimum in the 4 or 5 spot. And that's something to always be excited about, man. They do some wild stuff here. I can't wait to see where they go next. But that's all I got from a non-spoiler standpoint. If I say anything else, I'm gonna be spoiling things that I'm sure you guys do not want spoiled. So that means it's time to give it a score. So let's get the C-Maniac meter up there, boys. As I said, this is action-packed to the max, man. Justin Lin does some wild stuff in this movie. Some of the wildest we've seen in this franchise, and it's highly entertaining. Love the family story beats and the stuff that they tie into the overarching story and how they're expanding the universe and setting other things up. Love this cast. John Cena, excellent addition. Just for me, not really too much to pull apart on this one, you know. So I don't have it all the way at the top. So for me, this is gonna land a solid 4.2 C-Maniacs out of 5. Like I said, I think this is upper echelon of the Fast franchise. Certainly in that upper half, it does the things you want. 4.2 is what I got for you. But I'm not quite done. I do want to talk about a couple spoilery things. So if you don't want spoilers, please exit now. But if you do, give me a 3, give me a 2, give me a 1. Spoiler time. I want to talk about my favorite absurd moments of this movie. Everything that happens in space in this film is fantastic. They get to space, they put Tyrese and Ludacris up there, and everything from the humor beats that hit because Tyrese is just always eating candy, and how that plays in space, to some of the science that Ludacris spits, and then we physically see like them kind of inflate and how they get out of space. I loved all that stuff. Everything magnet-oriented was amazing. The concept is absolutely absurd. There's no way scientifically it would work the way in which it works, but the way they play with the magnets, whether it's humorous beats for like Ludacris to mess with Tyrese, or it is in the middle of an insane chase sequence, and you are pulling anything metal or throwing anything metal or literally pulling cars into vans. Like that van that has this magnet that Tyrese and Ludacris and Natalie Emanuel are involved with. Who, by the way, Natalie Emanuel gets to drive the car during this sequence, which is wonderful because she can't drive. She doesn't have a license or anything like that. Well, Ramsey doesn't have a license or anything like that inside the movie. But literally at one point, they catch John Cena by pulling his car into the van through a building. It's absurd, but everything they do with the magnets is just off the walls amazing. I mean, that big flip of that giant truck we've seen in the trailer, it's because they pinned 2 of the cars to the wheels and used magnets to get it to jump and flip over. Like, it's nuts. But everything oriented with magnets was fantastic. That bridge sequence that we've seen, Dom drive the car right off that cliff and hope that like that piece of metal like chain wraps around the right thing so it can spin around. Nuts. I mean, one, you've got everybody in cars as it's falling, and they're driving up, like, just absurd, but, like, highly entertaining edge of your seat stuff. And then when Tom drives off that cliff, man, this thing whips it around and literally just throws, it doesn't land gracefully, literally just throws the car into the side of a mountain, which it bounces up over and then hits like a spot where there's flat land and starts to roll. And I was sitting in the movie theater going, it's going to land on its tires. Like, it's going to land sitting straight upright. And sure as hell, it sure does. And there's almost no damage done to Michelle Rodriguez or Vin Diesel. It's wild. And that kind of plays into, Tyrese. But we'll get to Tyrese. So that whole bridge sequence, nuts. Cena zip lines across all of Edinburgh. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, there's different buildings and they make it look like it's plausible, but like he literally zip lines across the entire city. And it's wonderful. Like, it's just one of those things where you sit there and you're like, damn, can you imagine being on the ground just watching a guy, one arm, just zip line and like, it was just wonderful. And like, that's the type of stuff that I just love about this franchise. Like, oh, he needs to get from one side to the other? Sure, man. I mean, it's a franchise about cars. Let's take a zip line. So I love that whole beat and the fight that it ends up getting with Dom and him. They get a nice little face-off. We've seen that in the trailers where Dom dunks him off of the zip line and into a building. Love that stuff. Then Tyrese. That whole element of him being like, we literally never get a scratch on us. And like, he almost gets blown up by a landmine. And then he literally is like pinned by like 25 dudes, and they are all shooting at him, and he just stands up and starts spinning around and shooting because he doesn't think it's possible for him to get hurt. And at the end, there are like sizzled burn marks in the bulletproof vest he's wearing, but also in his jacket. And later in the movie, he goes, "These are bullet holes. I don't have any." He doesn't say I don't have it, but like where the holes are, like there should be bullets in him, and there are no bullets. And that is one of the things I am absolutely most fascinated with where we go next. Like, please, Justin Lin, when we go to that 10th one, explain that. Like, that's one of those things where it's like, just explain that. Like, if they are indeed like superheroes or superhumans in some way, I want that confirmed in canon in the Fast and Furious. Because bullets apparently don't enter Tyrese's body, but they rip through his clothes. I'm fascinated by that stuff. I mean, absolutely absurd things that I love about this movie. And last but not least, anytime a car catches a human, once again, we see Dom save Letty, not by catching her and landing into a car, but literally catching her with the hood of the car, and then does the same thing later on for Cena. And in both instances, it's just like, you sit there and you're just like, it's so ridiculous and so not plausible, but I love every time it happens. And then also like the fact that they were able to catch a car and a person with a van, I thought that was hysterical. So I needed to touch on a few of those things because they were like nuts. Like they drive through a landmine field at one point, leading up to that bridge chase. Or maybe right after that bridge chase. But nevertheless, like they have to be going like 85 miles an hour in order to trigger a landmine to blow up and get far enough away from it. There's no way any of these cars are going 85 plus miles an hour, but you roll with it because it's just fun. And I just had to talk a little bit about the absurdity of like Ludacris and Tyrese being in space and then getting out of space by just floating. The car, they have to destroy something, they destroy that thing, use up all the fuel, and the car is just out there floating, and a space station ends up picking them up, and they just get out with handmade spacesuits. It's so absurd. It's wonderful. It's why I love this franchise. So if you stuck around for the spoilers, those are all my little spoiler favorite moments from this movie. It's a lot of fun. I hope you guys are able to go see it if you're fans. If you can go to the theater, I recommend it. I had a great time. It was a little weird having like as many people in a theater and as many people near me in a theater, but once I had my masks on and I was cool with everything where I was, I had a blast being able to like hear other people in the theater. And I really, really dug the Jurassic World preview we got in front. I will be talking about that in a separate video, so keep your eyes peeled. But for now, that's all the C-Man's got to say about Fast 9. It was just fantastic. Exactly what I wanted on Thursday night. So those are all my thoughts, both non-spoiler and spoiler. Reed, now I want to know what you're thinking. Have you had a chance to see the Fast and Furious 9th addition to its franchise? What'd you think of F9, man? Did you have fun? Did you just think it's getting too ridiculous? Did it lose you at any point? This is one of those movies where it's like, I feel like it's like draw the line in the sand. Like, people who don't want anything to do with this franchise are definitely not going to like this movie, and people that love this franchise are definitely going to love this movie. But I think there's a contingent of people right on that border where like this movie could be your make or break. Like, it's just too absurd, I gotta get out, or it's just embracing all the things that I love, I'm so in. So anything you're thinking about that stuff, whether the movie's good, bad, indifferent, all your thoughts, I want them down below in the comments section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you're new, you want to come hang out with the old C-Man, anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailer reactions, you want to hear what I gotta say about the Jurassic World tease and dinosaurs with feathers, I got some stuff to say. I've been talking to some of you guys already about it off the trailer reaction. But you want to be here for any of that stuff, man. You just want to show a little love support for the old C-Man. Do that by joining the C-Maniac Nation and jumping over there, hitting that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts. Until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down. I've been the Seaman, and I am signing off. Peace. Oh, hey, what's going on? You must be sticking around because you're looking for more content featuring this guy. Well, guess what? You're in the right place. You can check out more videos right here and right here. And if you have and you want to come join that Sea Maniac Nation, you can hit that subscribe right over there.